Hello, everyone. The University's Support Staff Senate would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone here in attendance today. We're also live streaming, so we want to welcome Salina and Olathe and those across the state of Kansas who are viewing this live open forum. We appreciate your attendance very much. Today will be a Q&A format, and we have received some questions beforehand for the panel's consideration. Carrie Fink over on my left and Jackie Anders here on my right will be at the microphones asking questions. However, I want you all to be aware also that you're more than welcome to come down to the microphone and ask your own questions if you feel that you need to do that as well. You're more than welcome to do that. We have senators around the room. Senators, could you please stand up and be recognized? Many of those who have remained standing have pencils and postcards, so if you have questions and you're not real comfortable about coming down to the mic and asking your own questions, please feel free to write out your questions and send them to them, and they'll get them down to the front for you. So let's get started with the Q&A at this point. I'm going to ask the panel if they would please introduce themselves. If they want to make an opening statement, they're more than welcome to do that. So let's go ahead and start with Pam.
Hi, I'm Pam Warren, University Support Staff President, and I represent the College of Business in addition to all of Senate.
Good afternoon. I'm Cindy Bontrager, Vice President for Administration and Finance. I started out with the state, gosh, it's been a while, 31 years ago, in a classified position. And so I really appreciate all the work, what all you do, and how much you truly care about this university. So I just want to say thank you.
Kirk Schultz. I'll be temporarily unemployed in about 4 weeks. I'm glad to be here today, and once again, thank you all for coming out. I think we just started doing these about a year ago in terms of a regular, periodic open forum, and I appreciate the University Support Staff leadership and the construction behind me to bring these forums out there, give us a chance to hear your concerns and things like that. So I'm going to be doing a lot of listening today. I won't answer quite as many things as I probably normally will because I want to make sure that I don't make lots of commitments that I'm not here to follow through on. So I want to make sure that Cindy and Cheryl and Pam have their chance to voice their opinions and concerns on different topics. So if you go, well, gee, Kirk sat up there and hadn't said a whole lot, that's really the reason, is I want to make sure I'm respectful to, if we make commitments, they need to be followed through, and it's important that the folks who are still going to be here at the beginning of the next fiscal year are going to follow through with those. So I appreciate your strong support for Kansas State University, for our faculty, for our students, and the role that you all play to make this a great place for our students and families to come, spend 4, 5, or 6 years, and then continue on. All of us as a family play a major role in doing that, and as I talk to alumni, whether they just went here a year or two ago or 20 years ago, they talk about the great experience they had, and you all play a major role in making that experience what it is. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Cheryl Johnson, Vice President for Human Capital Services. I want to publicly acknowledge President Schultz for 7 wonderful years of lots of growth and infrastructure. I can personally say that I know he and Dr. Noel Schultz really gave us all that they had, and I'm very appreciative. It's been an honor to serve under you. On Saturday, I was honored to participate in a memorial service of Dr. Professor Joy Gordon, and it was a very heartfelt memorial service. And I think for me, some of the testimonies from the students were the ones that were the most heartfelt. They all talked about how Dr. Gordon had impacted their lives in such a positive way and helped them realize their full potential. Many said that they would not have gone to K-State or graduated from K-State if it had not been for her. So I say all that to say this, that the reason, the vein of all of our existence in this room is to ensure that the 25,000 students, graduate and undergraduate students, are successful and they're able to graduate. So I would really invite us to always think about that. I know that you do put students in the forefront of everything you do, so for that I'm very appreciative as well.
And my name is Carol Martin, and I'm the Vice President of the University Support Staff Senate. So let's go ahead and get started with, go ahead.
This first question is for President Schultz. Let's address the elephant in the room in reference to your departure from Kansas State University and your recently accepted position at Washington State. Congratulations. Could you talk for a moment, though, about, we're at difficult times here at K-State, and what would you have to say to the rest of us who are maybe thinking about jumping ship, for lack of a better word, and leaving campus? Why should we stay here? Can you enlighten us so that we know too?
Yeah. Do you have another question maybe we could talk about?
I have been dying to ask that. I'm sorry.
One of the things is my wife and I talk about next steps in our career path and things that we like to do is I always talk about you move to something, not away from something. And I think that may sound like some weird thing that I got on a fortune cookie, but the reason that we are looking and are moving to Washington State is really a set of professional opportunities for my wife and Noel. It turns out Pullman, Washington, which is smaller than Manhattan, has two major employers. One is Washington State University, and the second is SEL, which is it's an electronics manufacturer. And it turns out that Noel has worked with that company for 20 years, whether we were at Michigan Tech, Mississippi State, or Kansas State. So if you want to pick one area of the country that represents a great career move for my spouse, this is actually one of them. And Schweitzer Electronics Laboratories is somebody that the CEO of that told some of the regents at Washington State, we're glad we finally got Noel to Pullman and you found something for her husband to do. So I say that because for her, it really represents a great step, and she'll be on the faculty there like she is here. For me, the state of Washington just funded or started this last year the second publicly funded medical school in the state at Washington State University. And so I'm going to have the opportunity as president to fundraise for a medical school to help work on joining human medicine with animal health, veterinary medicine, pharmacy, and the other things the university has to offer. And it's the only new publicly funded medical school that I'm aware of that has occurred in the last decade. So it's not like this is happening all the time, and this really represents a tremendous opportunity. I love Kansas. I love Kansas State University. I'm going to miss a lot of the people here. I'm going to miss the campus. It's a beautiful place. It's got hardworking people. So I think if I go back to my first comment, I'm not trying to just say I wanted the first road out of the state of Kansas in Manhattan, Kansas, and I'd take anything I could find. This represented a unique career opportunity for both Noel and I on some things that we couldn't do here. And that's no detriment to Kansas. It's just these were a couple unique things that happened. And then finally, presidents have a shelf life. And I think after about 8, 9 years, it doesn't mean that you're not doing a good job, but maybe the same ideas don't work as well anymore and you're not bringing new things to the table. I think if I look at where K-State was in 2009 and I look at where we are today, buildings, infrastructure, lots of things, I'm proud of the accomplishments we've all done together. So I think for that next president, he or she, whoever that person is that is selected, they're going to hopefully take the university to the next step and the next level ahead. And I think there's a lot of positive momentum and great people here to help them do that. So bottom line, I'm not running from Kansas. I'm taking an opportunity that really looks outstanding at a next professional step. So.
This is a benefits question for Vice President Johnson. Is there now or is a plan being formulated to replace sick and vacation leave with personal time off?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
All right, this next question, I believe, is in response to the open forum yesterday that we had brought to us by Human Capital Services. It says staff will receive individual results on the total study. However, will the list of all classifications for USS and unclassified be available to review with any changes noted?
So on September 30th, the plan is to give individual information about your job title and your grade and your salary range. We're also planning to put on that website salary grades, salary ranges, to be completely transparent. It isn't our intent to give out individual information to another person about a person's salary, but it is our plan to be as transparent as we can about the structure. Did I answer the question?
I think you did. Regarding the salaries of USS and unclassified, since that is public information anyways, is there still the concern to release that information?
So we are not going to release individual information. There's 3,402 positions that we've looked at, and so it is not our intent to do that, but certainly we're going to have salary grades with salary ranges.
You know, I'd remind everybody, too, that the Manhattan Mercury publishes, I don't know, once a year, all the salaries for Kansas State University and the Riley County and all that kind of stuff. And so I know for a lot of folks that's, we all cuss and swear at it, and then we all look to see what our office mate is making. So I just want to remind everybody, as Cheryl talks about releasing this information and all this, it's out there. Anybody can go see it now. It's not secret. It's put out in the newspaper for everybody to look at. So I don't think this represents a huge change in a lot of that type of thing. So.
This is a question that stems from the CBIZ analysis. How will the fiscal year 18 compensation plan for those underpaid be changed with a new president?
Well, so I can't speak of the new president. What I'll say, and I'll invite President Schultz to comment as well, the administrators and the deans and the fiscal budget officers have all gone through this information, and we're committed to addressing those 458 employees that are not at minimum. And we understand that the Budget Committee also has to prioritize, so the commitment is there. As we shared with you in the meeting yesterday, we understand that the next couple of years will be quite challenging, and we're all aware of the callbacks, and we're all aware of the tuition caps, et cetera. But I really believe that there's a lot of commitment. We have spent an enormous amount of time talking about this among the cabinet, with the president, with the fiscal budget officers, with the deans, and so the commitment is there. And we're hoping, and I'm confident that the president, the future president, will honor that. It's based on a lot of fact-based information and analysis, so it's not a seat of the pants kind of analysis. So I have all hope and all confidence that it will happen.
Budget? Well, Carrie, if I could
Yes,
mention,
please.
I think another elephant in the room is the budget and concern with where we're headed. As you know, we had that, what's been defined as that perfect storm. We had some, minimum reductions in enrollment this past year. We know the state has been struggling, have not been investing in higher education, over the past several years. And if they do invest, they direct it, and so we're kind of restricted as to how we can spend that. The state has not invested in its people, in state employees, since fiscal year '09. Many of you are very aware of that because you have not had those salary increases. So what we've done is this past year, we just announced at the beginning of March that we would be doing a one-time callback in fiscal year '16. We started out with a 2% general use reduction to generate about $5.5 million. This is looking at the Manhattan and Research Extension budget. Polytechnic and Vet Med is on their own. They manage their own budgets. And not too long after that, the state came through with a 3% state general fund, which is 3% of that state appropriation that comes to Kansas State, which then equated to about 1.5% if you look at our general use budget, which includes those state appropriations and tuition. And so we followed up very quickly out to the unit heads, the deans, vice presidents, provost, with the additional 1.5%. So we're looking at 3.5% we're calling back. In the meantime, we had met with the deans in December, and we knew with our enrollment slide down and the challenges, we did not think we would probably see that restored in this next fall. So building budgets, we wanted to get out there as quickly as we can what we think will happen into fiscal year '17. Fiscal year '17 is going to be a very tough fiscal year. You all read papers, you understand the state has been struggling with trying to meet the revenue projections that they reestablished in November with the Consensus Revenue Estimating Group. These are economists who put this information together for the state. So they're struggling, trying to figure out where those revenue benchmarks are. At the end of this week, we'll be watching to see what happens with the March revenue, actual revenues coming in. We're hoping that the trend at least starts flattening out with the projections that they made in November, but we're preparing, most likely for continued reductions of that. In April, the Consensus Revenue Estimating will meet again around the 19th or 20th, and they'll have information from the tax reports and things like that. So they feel like they'll be able to make some pretty good projections, not only for the end of this year through June, but then also for next fiscal year. So the budget has been passed for fiscal year '17. The legislature has gone home, and they have passed basically the governor's budget, which keeps our funding flat. So it's not the reduced amount that we had to give back, the one-time money. That's basically restored back. What we don't know will happen is what will the legislature do when they return at the end of April? Will they take those estimates that come out from the consensus revenue and redo the budget? I mean, we would anticipate that would do that, but I have heard some inklings where they could just go home and let the governor deal with that throughout the first 6 months of the next fiscal year, which would not be a good situation for K-State. So that's kind of where we are with the budget. We're making some investments in fiscal year '17. We've got some new buildings coming online. That 27th pay period, you've heard us talk about that comes up every 11 years. Hits in our fiscal year, though you probably saw it in your taxes maybe in 15. So it's one of those that occurs every 11 years. So we're really going to be tight in '17. We're doing everything we can to figure out how to balance our budget, protect our mission of education, research, and service. I know there's a lot of discussion across our academy of what we can do, what can we stop doing, without affecting that. How can we be more efficient? And, what can we do to try to hang on through these tough years, and tell that, I don't know with the state situation if we can see much light even in the next 3 to 4 years. But anyway, that's kind of where we are with budget, and I'll always be happy to answer any questions regarding that.
This next question was sent to us through an email. First impressions are very important for us at Kansas State University and for those who visit us. You may agree that clean buildings and attractive grounds can be a small contributing factor for attracting talent and keeping that talent. What are the plans for adding custodial and ground staff for all the new square footage that you are adding to the university?
So we implemented a budget enhancement process this past fall, and Ryan Swanson and his staff put together, based upon the criteria that was established with the state, when we bring on new square footage, how many custodials that we need, how much we need for utilities, how much we need for the maintenance and operation and grounds, landscape, and on. So with the engineering and the business, those are the two big ones that will be coming on effective fiscal year 17. And I see Ryan sitting back there, and he will correct me if I don't state this correctly, but they've already been in visiting and talking with engineering, because obviously they're in their building, so we're needing to go in there. There will be new 3 custodial positions that have been hired. On board for that. And so the Budget Advisory Committee is reviewing, and, it hasn't gotten to the next president, whoever, up the change yet as far with the budget. But right now, what they have included, because they understand that commitment, they understand that we need staff. We cannot continue stretching these facilities employees any longer. And so we are be making investments, and that's part of the struggle that we're going to have in fiscal year 17, because we are prioritizing that staffing. It's important to have that, at the beginning of this next fiscal year. And so you will see there will be positions, and I'm sorry, I don't recall the numbers, but there will be custodial positions, and there will be funding for utilities. And we're still figuring out landscaping and things, because that might have to come a year later, just because of all the other things we're trying to fund in fiscal year 17. Is that any other questions on that? Because I know that's been an important issue for USS in prior years, making sure we have enough custodians.
Ask a question.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry.
While you're on the thing about the budget, I have a copy of the Hay Group report from '07, and I noticed something that Mr. Lightnaker said yesterday at the meeting, that it made it through 2 legislative sessions before it got tossed. What kind of impact is this budget thing that you're talking about going to have on the CBIZ report? And I'm sure there was a lot of money spent on this and the new CBIZ. Maybe that could have been used for raises for us, maybe. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, well, just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective of how much it does cost to provide, let's say 2%, because the last time we provided a pay raise for USS employees was fiscal year 15. It was 2%, basically a COLA. And it cost, about $1.2 million, $1.3 million. And that's USS. And we've had discussions, believe me, very passionate discussions in Budget Advisory Committee, that we have got to figure out how we can provide compensation increases, giving our new funding normal, if you will. We can't rely on that funding coming from the state. And so where that funding comes from is students, is a big portion of that. When we look at tuition rate increases, that's where that revenue, it is potential to come from. But that has to fund, a lot of other things also that we're struggling with. VP Johnson mentioned it earlier that, Cabinet is committed. We have got to figure out a way that we can provide compensation increases, because we do recognize that the USS have seen a net reduction in your pay, because health insurance, what you have to pay out as employees, is going up, and also retirement, what you contribute to CAPERS, is going up. And so your net pay is going down. And so we are working very hard to figure out, I'm not going to we can't promise you anything, but in 17, but moving forward in 18, trying to figure out to prioritize, these tuition dollars coming in, where do they need to be invested? Dr. Bosco will tell us scholarships, because he says it's important for us to make it affordable that our students can get here. But some of those that have been on the budget advisory, I think, have really, hopefully that process is more transparent, how difficult it is in order to do what we need to do on our campus with the limited resources that we have, and especially when the state has been done investing in us. And I encourage all of you who vote and who are interested in investing back in higher education to get out there, and that's where I see we can maybe make a difference. It's going to take a while for the state and the legislature to figure out that universities in K through 12, the education really is an economic driver in our state, and we have to have a strong workforce for businesses to utilize the employees. But it's a struggle. So I did dance around that question a little bit.
This is a question from the floor for Vice President Johnson. What would be an appropriate amount of time for one of the directors of Human Capital Services to return a phone call? It has been more than 6 weeks and still no response.
So the first thing I'd like whoever sent the question is to talk to me offline so we can get you resolved. We're working very hard to work on being very customer centric, and so if someone has had that experience with Human Capital Services, please, let me know and we'll try to get that issue resolved for you.
This is a question from the floor. Is there a new furlough layoff plan in place in relation to the new pay families? And how will seniority work in the new job titles and families?
So 2 questions, I believe, in reference to a furlough. We have been working on updating our furlough policy, and we're going to be, I believe Gary will be coming to the U.S. Senate in a couple of weeks to review that furlough policy. That is not to say that there is any scheduled furlough going on, but we are changing it, and it's based on a salary. So the theory here is that the more you make, the more time off you might get through a layoff policy, and we did a lot of research from other universities, and so they have kind of a process where if you make this much money, you potentially could be laid off for more days than if you make this much money. So Gary will be sharing that. He worked with a cross-functional group throughout campus to kind of develop that furlough policy, and it's just because we hadn't updated our furlough policy and it was time. I think there was a second part to the question. Can you refresh my memory, Jackie? Was there a second part to that question?
It was, let's see, on this side, it was how will seniority work in the new job titles and families?
Okay, so seniority in and of itself will not have a direct connection, but what you'll see is for the pay grades, you'll get a salary range, and it'll be from minimum, which is the 25th percentile, to maximum, which is the 75th percentile. And as we're able to fund merit increases, as VP Bontrager said, the goal is that the more experience you bring, probably the stronger your performance and the more contribution, and you'll be able to move across that pay grade. So seniority is not a direct connection, but one can say that the more time you've been in a job, the more experience you have, the more you're able to bring to that job, then the more you'll be compensated.
One comment I did want to make on the furlough issue. You can easily say, well, everybody says that you're not going to have furloughs. Why bother having a plan for something you don't need? Last summer, when the state screwed around for so long getting their budget done and mandated that we had to put things in place, Human Capital Services was basically up all night trying to put together some sort of program and plan so that we had some equitable way of managing that. I want to reiterate as strongly as possible, there is no plans, there have been no discussion, there's no behind-the-scenes work that we're doing this because we're really preparing for a furlough and we don't want to tell everybody. It's clear that we need a plan so that if ever something happens and we have to put it in place, we've got something that people have seen and they go, okay, we hope we never have to deal with it, but at least we've got something that makes some sense. So I just want to reiterate that because as people talk about it, it's easy to get around the water cooler and say, well, yeah, I know they claim that, but then why are we even bothering with a plan in the first place? We really want to make this as clear as possible from all of us in the cabinet. This is not part of our financial plan moving forward, but we do need to make sure we have something in place that makes sense and has been done in a shared governance style.
Would it be possible to increase the general use fund for the university by using a small percentage of every donation designated to go to the university and place it in a general use fund, such as using it for salaries or anything else here at the university?
You know, so this comes up frequently when we talk about trying to figure out more creative ways to find funds to do anything across campuses. You know, you say, well, gosh, we raised $150 million. If you just take a couple percentage of that, we could fund all kinds of stuff. It turns out there's already several liens on those dollars when they come in. For example, the way the fundraising operations are partially paid for is with dollars that come in off of those. There's a certain percentage. And so the issue is, at some particular point, those dollars need to go towards purpose. It's, you know, if somebody gives it to a scholarship, they don't want 70% of it to go to the scholarship. They want 98% or 100% to go to that. So we've really worked hard to try and be fiscally transparent with our donors. So we don't say, give us $1 million and we only, you know, really use $850 million of it for something, or $850,000. We're going to do all these taxes on everything else. So the faculty have frequently also made the same suggestion. They said, let's also maybe tax ticket prices for athletic events and use some of that. This is not to say that we couldn't do those types of things in the future, but just as you all may have different philanthropy things that you all write checks for in the town, the community, your church, you want to know where those dollars are going for when you write that check, and we want to make sure that if in the future anything like that is put in place, we're very transparent with the people writing the checks that this is part of where that dollars are going to. So I think that probably isn't something that we want to do right now, but Greg Willems, the new CEO of the foundation, is very aware of the stresses on the university based on lack of state investment, and he's looking for creative things to be able to do to help.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Reeves. President Schultz, I know you're a big fan of movies, and with all due respect, I feel sometimes like we are in the movie Groundhog Day, in the fact that we come to these forums and you usually get the same questions, and we would like the same answers. We would all like the same thing of less money being taken out of our paycheck and more money being put into our paycheck. The last forum I addressed a couple different issues, and this time I'm not going to turn around and walk away. I am going to stand here and get two answers from you. So the first one, Carol has paperwork. I'd prefer that she not give it to you right now because I do not want you to be distracted from what I'm saying. So there has been the rumor or myth that there has been a requirement of a bachelor's degree for all unclassified positions. I brought that up at the last forum, and I had the paperwork in my hand, but nobody asked for it. So I have 3 copies for you as the 3 administrators to see that in September of 13, there was a memo set out to the deans, directors, and the department heads, and those are more or less all of the people that oversee all of the hiring throughout the university. So my suggestion might be that our Vice President of Human Capital Services maybe put out another memo. I don't really think that this is a one-size-fits-all. There are some jobs that definitely require bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and PhDs. So I'm not looking for one of those jobs. I do believe that I have skills that would fulfill the obligations and the experience through doing jobs that would meet the minimum requirements of a bachelor's degree. So everybody's going to have that opportunity to substitute work experience for education, but until that memo is somehow replaced with another memo, the climate is not going to change here at the university. So that's more of a statement. I would just like to see that put forward. Again, I know Senate's been asked to have some input on that. I just don't think you're going to be able to say every four-year degree requires 4 years of job experience. I don't think that's going to work. So somehow, some way, we need to make some move in the right direction, because again, there's a lot of university support staff people that do those jobs of the unclassified when those people are gone or in a transition period, but when it comes down to it, they say, I'm sorry, you're unqualified to fulfill that position if it opens up. The second one is peer review, and I will continue to fight this fight, but I'm hoping that we can end this fight concerning peer review. There's a reason why I'm very passionate about peer review. I have gone through 2 appeals myself personally, not having to do with anything here at Kansas State University, I would like to say. But both of those appeals, at the beginning, I was found to, more or less, for lack of better words, be in the wrong. I appealed both of those decisions, and both times, those decisions were overturned. That's why I feel so strongly about the way that we go through the peer review. I would still like to see it revert back to the way it was before we went from classified employee to USS staff. As Cheryl said last time, that really doesn't affect a lot of people, and I know we have great people that work in the Human Capital Services Department that give us that great support of trying to mediate those things out ahead of time. But because of the limited dollars, the tuition cap, the callback money, all of this, that we can clearly see that there's not going to be finances ahead. This would be one thing, and I think it's the only thing that really, to me, that I have heard of that has been an issue since we went to USS. There's been something that the people have said repeatedly that they want it changed back to that. And again, I will remind you that it's not a legal issue. That's not what I'm talking about. The whole thing stems from, we were told we were not going to lose anything, that if anything, things would be better for us. And again, I don't feel like dividing up those responsibilities is helping matters. It's a 2-level opportunity for somebody to argue their case and to have their case heard. And so that's why we have that second level, and that's why it was there originally. And President Schultz, respectfully, before you leave, I would really like to ask if you would please overturn that and turn us back to where we were when we were classified as far as peer review.
You want?
Yeah, I'll speak after you.
Lisa, I appreciate your passion for this particular thing, and you're right, from a Groundhog Day perspective, it's like that movie. You make this request each particular time, and I know you're speaking on behalf of a bunch of your colleagues as well, so I appreciate the fact you're persistent. I think there's just fundamental disagreement probably with the 3 of us up here on the fact that we need that. I think you all have made a case strongly that you would like it. I think our stance has continued to be, let's wait some period of time and give what's in place a chance to operate. And I think there's just a fundamental disagreement on those 2 different stances. So I will tell you, I'm not going to, on my way out, do something like that, either positively or negative, and kind of leave it for my colleagues to figure out in the aftermath how to deal with it. And I suspect if we continue to do things the way we are, that you and your colleagues will continue to say, we think that we got to fix it or change or do something different on the system. But I believe right now that we've said pretty in writing, we need to give this some time. We need to work through there and see how things go. And I think you all have got to also give us some flexibility to try that and see where it goes. So I'm not going to do that on the way out. I will tell you that. And but you all will continue. I believe, appropriately, to bring forward things that you disagree on, and that's okay. We're not always going to agree on everything. So I just think because we haven't said yes right away doesn't mean that the answer is always no, and I want to make that perfectly clear. But I think at the present time, we're not ready to make that move. And Cheryl and Cindy, you feel free to.
Anything else?
That's all,
Ms.
thank you.
Reeves? Okay, thank you.
This is for the classified, or the University Support Staff Senate President and Vice President. Can you say what key issues the Senate has been working on this year, and what results can you report?
Well, we've been fighting for peer review, and obviously you heard the answer to that.
I got distracted. Can you repeat the question, please?
Can you speak what key issues the Senate has been working on this year, and what results can you report?
Well, let's see. The peer review has taken up a considerable amount of our time. We have had a lot. We've had a lot of interactions with Vice President Johnson about Page Up, and that's taken a great deal of our time as well. We've identified a lot of the areas that were needed a little help on. So that's one of the things that we have been working very closely with Roberta. I'm sorry, I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name because I would butcher it. She's not here. So that's one of the things. We've been anticipating greatly the CBiz data. And we had a meeting with Cheryl Johnson and Derek, and some of the other folks recently. We've also been working on trying to get our human capital liaison reinstituted to attend to the Senate, which we were successful in doing in February, I believe. That's just recently what we've been doing. I'm sorry, my memory's not so well. That's just probably the last 3 or 4 months.
Can I just add a couple of comments? So the first thing that we wanted to do in Human Capital Services is to fix the hiring process. So you might not realize it, but we had over 139 steps to hire folks, and it took a long time. And so a team really kind of looked at it and process mapped and made a lot of improvements. And then in February, we launched Page Up. And the talent acquisition team, they've worked really, really hard to make it successful, but we are up to the feedback, and we realized that there were some things that if we could have a do-over, we would have done it differently. And so we got a lot of very rich feedback from the USS Senate, and we took that feedback very, very seriously. And we're now repurposing the training so that it's more fit for the audience. So if you're on the search committee, there's search committee training. If you're hiring manager, there's hiring manager training, et cetera. So it really is a testament, I think, of us trying to listen to all of our stakeholders and making a difference there. So for that, we really do appreciate the USS Senate for providing us the feedback. I wanted to just, not really in the spirit of maybe trying to develop some common understanding, which we may never do. One of the reasons we can't go back to the way things were is that you are no longer civil service employees, so that layer went away. But what we're encouraging people to do is go out, do your research, look at other universities in the state of Kansas, and find out what their appeals process looks like and how that compares to ours. I think you will find that there's at least 4 to 5 different layers for PRC, 5 to 6 for appeals. And so that's kind of the backdrop. It isn't that we're just being hard-headed and not wanting to cooperate. We believe that it's a fair and equitable process. So since the conversion of civil service to USS, which was, as you know, June 8th, 2014 to March 24th, 2016, I wanted to do some research, and Employee Relations was gracious to give me some data, which I want to share with you just to give you some context. So between that period of time, there were 22 dismissal requests. 4 were changed to decision-making leave rather than dismissal. 2 employees resigned in lieu of termination. 7 were probationary employees with performance and/or conduct issues. 3 were job abandonment, and 5 were not challenged by the employee, and 1 is pending. So I just wanted to give you some context that the process appears to be working, and changes are being made, and decisions are being reversed. So I wanted to just kind of put that out there, that it's just, we see it a bit differently, and it doesn't mean that right or wrong or whatever, but we think that it's a fair process.
One other thing I'd like to comment, the University Support Staff Senate meets with the senior administration, the president, the vice presidents, lots of other people on a very regular basis. When you talk about accomplishments, it's easy sometimes to have 15 things you want to do, and you accomplish 14 of them, and it's easy to look at the one you didn't and go, well, see, boy, we just weren't being very effective. So if I look at the leadership searches on campus, we've got lots of university support staff that have been key members of our Vice President for Research search and Dean searches and things like this, helping to attract that next outstanding set of leadership here. So when we talk about accomplishments, I think you've got a group of terrific individuals that are not afraid to bring forward controversial things where there may be some disagreement. But frankly, we can never make progress in anything if people don't bring forward ideas and things they would like to see happen and change and things like that. And I think you all need to have some confidence that the University Support Staff Senate doesn't shy away from things that they think are important and are very, very engaged in helping the university move forward. And as both of the individuals that are sitting up here with me can attest, I know they both work very hard. Like you all, they've got full-time jobs, and they got lots of other things they try and do, and have done a great job representing the university support staff this year. So, you know, each of them probably could have had a list of all these other accomplishments if they knew ahead of time, but I will say it's an important group for K-State moving forward, and again, you should feel proud of the fact you have people representing you who are doing a great job.
Thank you.
We're closing in on 3 o'clock, and we've got a lot of questions here that we're just not going to get to today. And I'd like some assurance that these questions will be forwarded to you all, and if we could get them back in a timely manner and not 6 months or
Yeah, that's
after the fact, because we've got a lot of questions here, and I don't want folks to think that we're not going to address or ask those questions, but can we get some assurance that we will get some timely feedback for
Yes.
these questions?
Yes.
Okay. There was a follow-up question regarding the response time from the Directors of Human Capital Services. They don't feel that a time was given as far as a timeline when they should get back to you. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit more?
It's situational. If there's some research to be done, we have to allow them to do research. A lot of times they are complicated questions, so hopefully we're being very responsive, but what I did suggest is whoever's having that issue, if they would talk offline to me, we can do some research and make sure that their answers get met. But I don't want to put an artificial timeline that people will get back with you within 2 hours if I don't know the situation.
I do think it's reasonable for anybody to expect on any office on campus, whether it's Human Capital Services or Finance Administration President's Office, that they should at least get something back that says we acknowledge that we heard it and that we got it and we're working on it. And Cheryl's right, occasionally sometimes stuff may take 4 weeks, and if we come back and say it's going to take us 4 or 5 weeks to get this, at least somebody goes, I didn't get blown off. So I think there should be a reasonable expectation that if you don't get a fairly rapid response back on something, that you ought to at least get some acknowledgement, email, whatever that says, hey, we heard it, we're working on it, it's going to take us some period of time. So a black hole is not acceptable where you just don't know what's happening. But that's not just human capital services, that's everything.
And your point is well taken, and we'll certainly, in the spirit of continuous improvement, work on that.
And this next question has to do with the possible satisfaction survey for HCS. At a special meeting in February, Vice President Johnson stated, she believes that 300 people have used the services of employee relations, have felt heard, and felt that they received a fair shake. And we're just wondering, is there any survey that could be put together, or is there something in place currently, or is that something that you're looking at?
So I would invite the USS Senate to help us work on a survey. That would be great. We welcome that opportunity.
This is in regards to the total reward study. Who approves the implementation of the study results? And will the results be reviewed by the Alternative Service Committee or USS Senate to represent approval from staff?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by approval. Okay. I don't think I understand the question.
Well, I think what they're trying to get at is the CBIZ study. There's obviously things being implemented from that study. Who approved maybe that implementation? And will the results from the CBIZ study be reviewed by Senate? Or will we get maybe a abbreviated version of the results from CBIZ or the
Yeah,
full
so we
study?
met with the USS Senate last week, and we went over the survey results in detail. And we're also having open forums, and we've already posted one of the open forums online. We're planning to be at Polytechnic tomorrow, where we'll have 2 open forums, and then we'll be in Olathe the following day. So I just want to make you all aware that if you weren't able to see it in Manhattan, it is being posted online. In fact, it's up and live as we speak.
Can someone please provide an update, maybe this is for Vice President Bontrager, an update on the enhanced vacation leave proposal that was before the Board of Regents?
Yes. So the COPS and Council of Business Officers basically moved to recommend it to the board. I believe we completed that in November, somewhere in that time frame. And so then the board staff put together an issue paper, and in last month at the University of Kansas Med Center, actually I think February, and then last month again, in this last meeting in March, Fiscal Affairs and Audits did recommend that the USS leave be changed so it's consistent with unclassified leave, vacation leave, which is 176 hours a year. Now, I did want to note that there was some resistance from the board. They asked about market, and we know that's pretty generous leave compared, to other businesses and things around the Manhattan and in the state. But I think that they did make that recommendation, so now it will go forward to the governance committee at the board in April, which is, their meeting will be here on campus, at the K-State campus on the 20th of April. If the governance approves, then it'll move forward. And so just to remind you that there is a cost to implementing this. It doesn't come directly out of our pockets, but there is a cost, because I believe it was this last forum where I heard mention of custodian staff having difficulties utilizing their leave. And so the cost that I'm talking about is the productivity. So when we provide the vacation leave, we do have to make sure that the work is completed. And so the cost of K-State is around $725,000, and that is how much more we would pay out of that leave if an employee leaves the university. It's a liability, that is, and then there is the productivity issue. But I heard loud and clear that this was an important issue for university support staff. And there were USS representatives from Wichita State, Pittsburgh, and maybe KU Med that was at the meeting. The governance meeting last month, or actually it was just a week or so ago. It feels like last month. It's been so hectic. But, and I think that really helped once the board recognized that it was a benefit that USS employees wanted, and it hopefully is going to move forward. We won't know for sure until probably the May meeting of the regions. Because like I said, it will go through the governance in April. They will need to move it forward, bless it, and that'll be basically 8 of the regents have reviewed it, and so we would anticipate then it would get passed in May. So any questions on that?
No, but I am going to make a comment because I'm on a listserv for the university support staff presidents from the other regents, and they did a real good shout out to you, Cindy, because they said you were very passionate in your defense of this because you knew the value that it had for USS. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have 2 questions regarding the parking study, so because of time, I'm going to try to combine them into one, so I apologize if I butcher this question. But basically, they want to know what is the likelihood that the zones will be implemented, and what is the likelihood of higher permit prices coming? Is this already a done deal?
No. So what they're referring to, the parking study that we had, commissioned it with the North Campus Corridor, Wills and Perkin, or Perkin and Will, I always get those two mixed around. So what came back in that study, and it's out on, and I see Ace sitting back here, so he also will correct me, but it is out there on Parking Services website. I encourage you all to go and look at that. In that study, what they proposed is a change to our permit pricing that puts zones. So the premise of that is the closer you park in the core campus, that's like a premium, if you will. It's an economy thing. The demand is greater than the supply. So as our parking lots get restricted, the more we grow, there's a bigger demand. The premise of that is you pay a higher price. No, we have not had any discussion. Before we would make any change like that, we will need to engage the campus community in having a discussion on that. So what we're working on is putting together a small committee made up of USS representatives from Parking Council, and they will be helping us figure out for this next fall shuttle routes. We want to do that park and ride more frequently. We want to integrate it in with what is happening in housing and dining, and we're looking at bus stops, because I know this has been a priority for our Senate groups, of where it makes sense to put, because I don't want to invest in a stop and then we have to tear it down because we change routes and things like that. But I do believe that we can find some solutions, and there probably will be locations on the core campus that, regardless of how we may change the bus route, that most likely that will be a good spot for a bus stop. And so then we want to identify those. And on April 21st, there is a parking forum at, Ace, do you remember, 3:30, I believe is the time, in the Big 12 room. And so please, put that on your calendars, plan to attend if this is an important topic for you, because parking is always a fun, challenging thing to do. But no, there is no changes. As far as with the zone permit, the Parking Council is recommending changes, and so there will be information coming out about that. And then we'll be showing then some of these routes, and then potential bus stop locations. And then next fall, what I'd really like to do is put a bigger group together, and then let's talk about longer term parking and transportation, what we need to do to really grow that and provide a better service for that.
Okay.
There is one thank you. I think we better get that in there. Tuition assistance. There's a thank you for those that have college-age dependents that are getting the tuition assistance, and they're hoping that that will not go away.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up today. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for all your many questions. I'm going to, if there's any of the panel members that would like to give any closing comments, you're welcome to do that. Otherwise, this forum is over.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to remind everybody to come to the April 27th recognition ceremony at 2 o'clock in the Union Ballroom.
And I'll stick around for anyone that would like to talk with me.
Thank you.